The night was heavy with smoke, and the alien slave market smelled of fear, dust, and cheap fire. The cages were lined in rows, iron bars glowing faintly under the dim light of torches. Shouts echoed as buyers bargained for slaves, strong warriors, skilled workers, or exotic companions. One by one, the cages were emptied, the slaves dragged away with chains around their necks. By the end of the night, silence fell over the market. The traders counted their credits with greedy smiles, but in the farthest corner, one cage still remained locked. Inside, a young alien girl sat on the cold ground. Her body was thin, her skin bruised, her eyes wide with despair. Nobody had placed a bid on her. "She is worthless," one trader sneered, kicking the bars. "Too weak, too broken, no use to anyone." The girl lowered her head. She was used to these words. All her life she had been unwanted. Born small in a world where strength meant value, she had been cast aside even by her own people. The market was just another cage, another place where hope was crushed. The other slaves were gone, sold to cruel masters or dangerous minds, but at least they were wanted by someone. She was the one left behind, the one not chosen. Then, footsteps echoed against the stone floor. Slow, heavy, steady. The traders turned and frowned as a tall figure entered the marketplace. A human. Humans rarely came to these places. They were known for their strange laws, their strict rules against slavery. To see one here, walking into the filth and cruelty of the alien market, was a shock. Whispers rose among the traders. What is he doing here? Humans don't buy slaves. Maybe he is here for something else. The man walked with a calm but commanding presence. His clothes were travel-worn, dust from long roads clinging to his boots. His eyes, sharp and steady, moved over the market. He ignored the laughter of the traders and the greedy smiles of those who thought they could trick him. His gaze stopped, only when it reached the last cage, the forgotten girl. The girl raised her eyes slowly, afraid of what she might see. She expected hunger, cruelty, or maybe amusement. That was what most eyes carried when they looked at her. But this man's eyes were different. They were calm, heavy with something she did not understand. The trader hurried forward, smirking. "Not worth your time, human. She is weak, a waste of credits. You want strength? I can show you fighters. You want beauty? I can show you dancers. But this one? Trash." The man ignored him. He stepped closer to the cage, kneeling down so he was level with the girl. The torchlight flickered, revealing her trembling hands clutching the bars. For a long moment, no words were spoken. Finally, the human said in a low, steady voice, "You're coming with me." The traders burst into laughter. Him? Buying her? Madness. The girl's heart froze. She didn't understand. Was this another trick? Another cruel joke? The man rose to his full height, pulling out a small pouch of credits. "Name your price." The trader blinked, caught between greed and confusion. He laughed nervously, then snatched the pouch. "Fine. Take her. She's yours. Foolish human. You'll regret this." The cage door creaked open for the first time in weeks. The girl flinched back, pressing herself against the wall. She didn't want to step out. Slavery meant pain, and she had already endured too much. But the human didn't drag her out. He didn't chain her wrists or bark an order. Instead, he extended a hand. His voice was calm, steady, almost gentle. "You're free from them now. Come." The girl stared at the hand, confusion tearing at her mind. No one had ever offered her a choice. Every order in her life had been a command, backed with whips and blows. Yet here was this strange human, not pulling her, not forcing her, just waiting. Her body shook as she stepped forward, her bare feet touching the cold stone. Slowly, carefully, she placed her hand in his. His grip was strong, but not cruel. He helped her out of the cage, steadying her trembling legs. The traders jeered behind them. "Enjoy your mistake, human. She'll die before she's of any use." The man ignored them. He placed his cloak over her shoulders to cover her thin frame. Without another word, he led her out of the market, Away from the laughter. Away from the cage. The girl's heart pounded. Fear whispered in her mind. Why would a human do this? What did he want from her? Every step into the night felt heavier, but deep inside, a spark flickered. Small, fragile, but alive. It was something she thought she had lost forever: hope. As the gates of the slave market closed behind her, the forgotten girl wondered if her life had just ended, or just begun. The road out of the slave market was silent, except for the crunch of boots on gravel and the faint shuffle of bare feet behind them. The human walked with steady steps while the alien girl trailed close, wrapped in his cloak that dragged across the ground. She clutched the fabric tightly, still trembling. Her mind was a storm of fear. Why had he bought her? Why her, the unwanted? Every cruel word from the traders echoed in her head. Worthless, broken trash. And yet this man had paid credits for her. For what reason? The night air was cold, sharper than the smoky heat of the market. A faint breeze touched her bruised skin, and she shivered. The human noticed. He stopped, glancing back at her. "You'll catch sickness like that," he said. His voice was calm but firm, the voice of someone used to giving orders. He reached into his pack and pulled out a piece of dried food. "Eat." The girl's eyes narrowed. Her stomach twisted with hunger, but suspicion burned stronger. She had been tricked before, given food laced with poison, water mixed with drugs. She shook her head, stepping back. The human sighed, crouching so his tall frame wasn't towering over her. He tore the food in half, took a bite himself, then handed the rest to her. "See? Not poison." The girl hesitated, her heart beating fast. Slowly she reached out with trembling fingers and took the food. She nibbled it, still watching him carefully. The taste was simple, dry, but real. For the first time in days, her stomach felt warmth. He nodded once. "Good. Keep your strength. We have a long road ahead." The girl didn't reply. Her voice was buried under years of silence. She followed, keeping her distance, her eyes darting at every shadow. Hours passed. The two figures moved through empty roads under a sky filled with strange stars. At one point, the girl whispered, almost too soft to hear, "Why me?" The human slowed but did not turn. "What do you mean?" "You could buy anyone," she muttered. Her throat hurt from speaking. "Why, me?" The man walked in silence for a long time. His jaw tightened, as though the question pulled something heavy from his past. Finally, he said, "Because no one else would." The girl frowned. His words made no sense. To her, humans were no different than the traders, selfish, greedy, cruel. Why would this one choose her, the least valuable? Suspicion gnawed at her again. "Do you plan to sell me later?" she asked in a broken voice. The man stopped this time. His shadow stretched across the dirt as he turned toward her. His eyes were steady, not cruel, not mocking. "I don't deal in slaves. You're not a thing to be sold. Not anymore." The girl's chest tightened. She almost laughed, bitter, sharp, broken. "Not anymore? I've always been a slave, that's what I am." "Not to me," he said simply. Her breath caught. His words felt unreal, almost dangerous, as if hope itself was a trap. She lowered her eyes, hugging the cloak around her thin body. They camped near a small ridge at dawn. The human built a small fire, keeping it shielded from open eyes. He handed her a flask of water, then sat on the opposite side of the flames, sharpening a blade. The girl studied him quietly. His hands were scarred, his movements precise. A man used to battle, she realized. She wondered how many he had killed, and why a warrior would waste his time on someone like her. When the fire crackled low, she asked softly, "What will you do with me?" The human didn't look up from his blade. "First, get you away from this place. Second, make sure you live." Her heart pounded. Nobody had ever spoken those words to her. Make sure you live. Most masters only cared if their slaves worked or obeyed. Life or death had never mattered. Why? She whispered again, her voice breaking. The man paused, his eyes catching the firelight. There was a shadow in his expression, something heavy and unspoken. Because I had a daughter once. The girl froze. His voice was calm, but beneath it was pain, old and sharp. He said no more, and she dared not ask. As the fire burned low, sleep tugged at her. She lay on the ground, pulling his cloak tighter. For the first time in years, she wasn't locked behind bars. The open sky stretched above her, endless and strange. But even as sleep closed in, fear whispered, "What if this is only temporary? What if tomorrow he changes? What if he abandons me like everyone else?" Her eyes drifted shut, but her heart remained, restless. Across the fire, the human sat awake, watching the stars with a face carved in stone. His hand rested on the blade, his eyes scanning the dark hills. He wasn't only watching for raiders, he was watching her too, guarding her. The traders had mocked him for wasting credits. They had called him a fool, but he had made his choice, and no matter what dangers waited ahead, he would not turn back. Theo. Girl did not know it yet, but her life had already changed. The next morning came with a gray sky and a sharp wind. The human packed his few belongings quickly, then kicked sand over the ashes of their fire. He stood tall, adjusting the straps of his pack. The alien girl sat a few steps away, hugging, his cloak around her small frame. She had not slept well. Every noise in the night had made her flinch. Every shadow had made her heart race. When he turned to her, his voice was steady. "We move." She hesitated. The thought of following another master twisted her stomach, but her legs moved anyway. What choice did she have? She trailed behind him, barefoot, her eyes darting at every rustle in the wind. The path stretched across rocky hills and dry fields. The air smelled of dust and wild plants. Strange insects hummed in the grass, their wings catching the light. It was a wide world, bigger than any cage, and yet the girl felt no freedom, only fear. By midday, her feet burned, cut by sharp stones. She slowed, limping. The human noticed and stopped. Without a word, he knelt and unrolled a bundle from his pack. Inside were worn but sturdy boots. He held them out. "Put these on." The girl blinked. Her first thought was suspicion. Nothing came without a price. She stared at him, waiting for the trick. "Do you want to keep bleeding?" he asked simply. Her lips trembled. Slowly, she took the boots and slid them on. They were too big, but they protected her feet, she whispered, almost too soft to hear. "Thank you." The man nodded once, then continued walking. He did not gloat, did not smile with victory, did not say, "You owe me." That silence unsettled her more than cruelty ever had. As the hours passed, the girl's mind churned. She replayed the night before, the food, the cloak, the fire. No master had ever treated her that way, but her fear argued back. He must want something. Nobody helps for nothing. At sunset, they reached a shallow river. The water was clear, running fast over smooth stones. The man filled his flask and handed it to her. She drank, but her hands shook. "You're still afraid," he said. It wasn't a question. She froze, water dripping from her chin. "You think I'll hurt you," he continued, his tone calm, almost tired. "But if that was my plan, I wouldn't waste my time keeping you alive." His words cut deep. She turned away, ashamed of her mistrust, but too scarred to let go of it. That night, they camped near the river. The girl sat close to the fire, staring at the flames. She remembered cages, whips, voices shouting orders. She remembered being told she was nothing. But here, sitting under the open sky, she wasn't ordered to kneel or chained by the neck. Still, her heart whispered, "This won't last. Nothing good lasts." The man sat across from her, sharpening his blade again. The steady sound of metal on stone filled the silence. Finally, she gathered courage. "Why do you carry me with you?" He looked up, meeting her eyes. His gaze was heavy, but not cruel. "Because you were left behind." Her brow furrowed. So? Many are left behind. His jaw tightened. He stared into the fire for a long moment. When I looked at you in that cage, I saw someone I couldn't walk away from. She lowered her eyes. The words made her chest ache, but fear still clung like chains. She pulled the cloak tighter, whispering, "You don't know me. You don't know what I am." The man's voice was quiet. "I know what they said you were, worthless, broken, trash. I heard it all." He leaned closer, his voice sharpening. "But I don't listen to slavers. They only see numbers. I see a life." Her breath caught. A life. Nobody had ever spoken of her like that. Later, when the fire dimmed, the girl lay awake. The river whispered, softly nearby. Her body was tired, but her mind refused to rest. She thought of his words again and again. "I see a life." Her chest felt strange, tight, painful, yet warm. Could he really mean it? Or was this another chain hidden behind kind words? She turned her head. Across the fire, the man was awake again, his back against a rock, his eyes scanning the dark trees. He didn't look like a master. He looked like a guard. For the first time, she wondered, was he protecting himself? Or was he protecting her? At dawn, they set out again. The road grew harder, climbing into stony hills. Wind howled between cliffs, carrying the cry of distant creatures. The girl stumbled often, but the man always slowed, never leaving her behind. By midday, she could no longer hold her silence. Her voice cracked as she asked, "Where are we going?" The human answered without hesitation, "Somewhere you can start over." Her heart skipped. "Start over?" He looked at her directly. "Yes, a place where no one owns you." She shook her head, tears stinging her eyes. "That place doesn't exist." His voice was firm. "It does. You'll see." She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe more than anything. But after a lifetime of cages, hope felt dangerous, like walking barefoot on sharp glass. Still, as the long road stretched before her, something fragile began to grow inside. A small trembling spark, like the first light of dawn breaking through the night. The third night of their journey fell cold and silent. The moon was hidden behind thick clouds, and the wind carried the howl of distant beasts. The girl huddled near the fire, wrapping herself tighter in the human's cloak. Her stomach growled, though she tried to hide it. Hunger was an old companion, but tonight it clawed harder than before. The human returned from the shadows, carrying a small bundle of supplies. He crouched by the fire and unwrapped dried meat and bread. Without a word, he placed them on a flat stone in front of her. The girl stared at the food. Her mind screamed with suspicion. Too easy, too kind. It must be a trap. He noticed her hesitation and sighed. "Eat. You'll collapse if you don't." She shook her head slightly, whispering, "Nothing is free." For the first time, his eyes softened, not with pity, but with understanding. "You're right. Nothing was free where you came from. But here." He slid the food closer. "Here, it costs nothing. Take it." Her thin fingers trembled as she reached forward. She broke the bread carefully, sniffing it like a frightened animal. Finally, she took a small bite. The taste was plain but real. Warmth spread through her body as she chewed slowly. Tears burned her eyes, though she tried to blink them away. Nobody had ever given her food without punishment, without a bargain, without cruelty attached. The human didn't speak again. He just sat across the fire, chewing his share of the meal in silence. For the first time, she felt something strange in his presence, not fear, not command, but safety. When the meal was done, he opened his pack again and pulled out a folded cloth. He placed it beside her. "Here, a blanket. The nights grow colder. The further north we go." Her lips parted. "For me? Yes. Unless you think I'm the one who needs it." The corner of his mouth almost curved into a smile. Almost. The girl pressed the blanket to her chest. It was rough and patched, but to her it felt softer than anything she had ever touched. She curled beneath it, her heart thundering. That night she cried quietly under the blanket, not from pain but from something she had almost forgotten: kindness. But safety was short-lived. Just before dawn, the human stirred. His hand shot to his blade as the sound of snapping twigs echoed in the darkness. The girl sat up quickly, eyes wide with terror. Figures moved between the trees, their torches casting crooked shadows. Raiders, voices hissed through the night. There they are. Take the girl, she's worth a fortune. The girl's heart pounded. She knew these men, the kind who sold flesh and blood for profit. Panic gripped her chest. Instinct screamed at her to run, to hide, to surrender. But the human stepped forward, blade drawn, his stance unshaken. You want her? His voice was iron. Come through me. The raiders laughed, thinking him only one man. But when they charged, their laughter died. The human moved like a storm. His blade flashed in the firelight, cutting through the first attacker. His fist broke the jaw of another. He fought not like a master protecting property, but like a father shielding his child. The girl crouched near the fire, trembling. For a moment she almost believed he might abandon her, like all others had. But he never stepped back. Every strike, every block, every movement was to keep them away from her. One raider slipped past, rushing toward her with chains in hand. She froze, paralyzed. But before the man could reach her, the human's knife flew through the air, striking the raider's arm. He screamed, dropping the chains. The human was there a moment later, finishing the fight. The rest fled into the dark, cursing. Silence returned, broken only by the girl's shaky breaths. The human cleaned his blade and turned to her. His shirt was torn, blood streaking his arm. He knelt, lowering himself to her level. Are you hurt? She shook her head quickly, her chest heaving, her wide eyes locked onto him. Why did you fight for me? His answer was simple, spoken without hesitation. Because no one else would. Her throat closed. The words sank deeper than any wound she had ever carried. He extended his hand again, the same hand that had freed her from the cage, the same hand that now dripped with the blood of men who tried to take her. This time, she didn't hesitate. Her small fingers slid into his palm, and he helped her to her feet. They sat together by the fire until the sun rose. The girl wrapped the blanket tighter around herself, still shaking. But something inside her shifted. All her life, hands had struck her, dragged her, chained her. This man's hand had done none of those things. It had only protected, only given. She whispered, almost too soft for him to hear. You're different. The human said nothing. His eyes were fixed on the rising sun, his jaw hard with thought. But his grip on his blade tightened, as if he knew this was only the first of many battles. The girl leaned into the blanket, her eyes heavy with exhaustion. For the first time in her life, she allowed herself to believe she might survive. And for the first time, she dared to think. Maybe, just maybe, she was more than a slave. The air after the raider attack was heavy with smoke and fear. The girl had not spoken since dawn. She walked behind the human, her new boots scraping the rocky path, her blanket folded tightly in her arms. She kept looking at his back, at the broad shoulders and steady steps. Why had he fought for her? Why had he risked his life against men with blades and chains? She had no answer, but the image of him standing between her and danger burned in her mind. Still, doubt clung like chains around her heart. What if he changes tomorrow? What if his kindness has a hidden cost? The human said nothing as they climbed into the mountains. The land grew harsher, the wind colder. Snow dusted the ground and their breaths rose like mist. By evening, they found shelter in the mouth of a cave. The human gathered wood and lit a small fire. The girl curled beside the flames, her thin body shivering. For a long time, silence filled the cave. Then she whispered, "Why do you keep me alive?" The human looked up, his eyes catching the glow of fire. Because life matters. Her hands tightened around the blanket. Not mine. To them, I was nothing. To them, he agreed. His voice grew firm. But I am not them. The words struck her like a blow, not of pain but of disbelief. Her chest ached with something she didn't understand. That night, danger came again. The fire flickered low when the growl echoed through the cave. The girl's heart froze. From the shadows, glowing eyes appeared, wild beasts drawn by the smell of food and blood. Their claws scraped against stone, their jaws dripping with hunger. The human stood immediately, blade in hand. "Stay behind me," he ordered. The beasts lunged. The cave erupted in chaos, snarls, sparks of fire, the sharp clang of steel. The man fought with every muscle, his blade cutting, his fists striking. One beast slammed him against the wall, claws raking across his arm. He gritted his teeth, refusing to fall. The girl crouched in the corner, terror locking her in place. But then she saw it. The human, bleeding, stumbling, yet still holding the line. He could run. He could abandon her, but he didn't. Every strike, every wound he took to keep her safe. Her chest burned. She wanted to scream, to hide, to disappear. But something else rose inside her, something stronger than fear. When one beast slipped past him and lunged at her, instinct took over. She grabbed a burning branch from the fire and thrust it forward. The flames roared and the beast recoiled with a furious snarl. Her arms shook, but she held the torch high, shouting through her fear. "Stay back!" The human turned at her voice. For the first time, he saw not just a trembling slave, but a spark of defiance in her eyes. That spark gave him strength. With a final cry, he drove his blade deep into the last beast. The cave fell silent except for the sound of their heavy breaths. Blood dripped from his wounds. His legs buckled, but he stayed standing. Slowly, he lowered his sword. The girl dropped the torch and rushed to him, fear flooding back. "You're hurt." He looked at her, his face pale but calm. "Better me than you." Her throat closed. The truth of his words was undeniable. He had chosen pain over her death. They sat together after the battle, the firelight flickering on stone walls. She tore strips from the blanket to press against his wounds, her hands clumsy but desperate. He didn't stop her. For the first time, he allowed her to give something back. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "Why do you do this? Why risk your life for me?" His eyes, heavy with exhaustion, met hers. "Because once, I couldn't save the one who needed me most." The girl froze. The weight in his voice told her it was no lie. He wasn't protecting her for gain or power. He was protecting her because he could not bear to fail again. As dawn broke, the cave glowed with pale light. The beasts were gone, their shadows burned into memory. The human sat against the wall, resting, while the girl watched him quietly. She remembered her life in chains, beatings, starvation, endless nights of despair. And now she remembered his hand pulling her from the cage, his body standing between her and death, his blood spilled for her sake. Something inside her shifted. The fear was still there, heavy and sharp, but beneath it something new had taken root. Trust. It was small, fragile, and terrifying. But it was there. The long road still waited outside the cave. More dangers would come, and her doubts had not vanished. But as they stepped out into the cold morning light, the girl stayed closer to him than before. For the first time, she wasn't just following because she had no choice. She was following because, in her heart, she wanted to. The morning air outside the cave was thin and sharp. The snow sparkled faintly on the rocky path, and the world was quiet except for the crunch of their steps. The human walked in silence, his arm bandaged roughly where the beast had clawed him. The girl walked close now, no longer trailing far behind. She still wrapped herself in the blanket, but she kept glancing at him, worry in her wide eyes. The night before had changed everything. He had bled for her. He had stood against death itself to keep her safe. And she had raised a torch against her own fear for the first time. Something between them had shifted. though neither spoke of it yet. By midday they found a stream winding through the valley. The human crouched to wash the blood from his arm, the cold water stinging against raw flesh. The girl knelt beside him, her hands trembling as she reached out. "Let me help." He glanced at her, and for a moment she thought he would refuse, but then slowly, he nodded. She tore more strips from the blanket and dipped them in water. Gently she pressed them to his wound. Her hands shook, but he did not flinch. "You're learning," he said quietly. She lowered her eyes. "I only learned from watching you." His lips tightened, but he said no more. That night they made camp in a hollow between two cliffs. The fire crackled weakly, fighting against the cold wind. The girl sat across from him, hugging her knees, her eyes shining in the flicker of flames. She had carried a question for days, and now it pressed too heavily to stay hidden. "Back in the cave," she whispered. "You said you couldn't save the one who needed you most. Who was she?" The human's eyes lifted slowly from the fire. Shadows deepened across his face. For a long moment he said nothing. Then his voice came low and rough. "My daughter." The girl's breath caught. "She was small," he continued, his eyes distant. "Bright, strong. She used to laugh at everything, even when the world around us burned. She was my light. But war doesn't care about light. When the soldiers came, I wasn't there in time." His jaw clenched. His hands gripped tightly around his blade as if holding it could keep the memory away. "I swore I'd protect her, and I failed." The fire popped, sending sparks into the night. The girl's chest ached. She wanted to speak, to offer words, but none came. Instead she whispered, "I'm sorry." The human shook his head. "Sorry doesn't bring her back. But when I saw you in that cage, something inside me remembered her. Your eyes, the way you were left behind. I couldn't walk away. I couldn't fail again." The girl's throat tightened. For years she had been told she was worthless. Yet here was this man, seeing his daughter in her, not as a burden, not as trash, but as someone worth saving. Silence, stretched, heavy and fragile. The girl stared into the fire, her tears reflecting its glow. Finally she whispered, "Do you think I can ever be more than what they said I was?" The human's gaze was steady. "Yes, you already are." Her heart trembled. She had expected anger, doubt, or dismissal. Instead, his voice carried certainty. For the first time in her life, someone believed in her. She hugged the blanket tighter, her tears falling freely now. Not of despair, but of something new. Healing. Later, as the fire burned low, the wind carried distant sounds, shouts, the echo of boots against stone. Raiders again. The human stiffened, his hand tightening on his blade. "They've been following us since the market," he muttered. Fear surged through the girl, but this time she didn't cower. She moved closer, her voice urgent. "You're hurt. You can't fight them all alone." He looked at her sharply. "What are you saying?" Her hands shook, but her eyes were firm. "I'll help. I won't hide again." The human studied her, searching her face. For the first time, he nodded. "Then stay close. Don't run. Stand with me." The girl's heart pounded. For years she had been weak, worthless, voiceless, but tonight she would not be. When the raiders appeared at the cliff's edge, torches blazing, the human rose with his blade ready. The girl stood just behind him, clutching a burning branch from the fire. The leader sneered, "Hand her over, human. She's property. She's nothing." The human's voice thundered against the night. "She is not property. She is not nothing. You'll take her only over my dead body." The girl's chest swelled, his words striking deeper than any chain ever had. For the first time, she believed them. The fight began. Steel clashed, fire roared, and the night shook with cries of battle. The human cut through the first raiders, his strength fierce despite his wounds. The girl swung her torch at another, her fear burning into courage. Together they stood, not master and slave, but as something stronger, protectors of each other. When the raiders fled at last, defeated and broken, the valley fell silent. The human dropped to one knee, breathing hard, blood dripping down his side. The girl rushed to him, catching his arm. "Don't fall. Please. You can't leave me too." His eyes met hers, filled with exhaustion but also with something fierce, pride. "I won't," he whispered. "Not this time." The battle in the cliffs had left the human bleeding and exhausted. His breath was heavy, his shoulders bent with the weight of wounds and memories. The alien girl sat beside him, clutching his arm as though letting go would mean losing him forever. The night faded, and dawn painted the horizon with soft gold. The girl watched the first light touch the mountains. She had never noticed sunrise before. In the cages, dawn had meant nothing, only another day of chains. But now, sitting free beside him, it felt like a promise. The human opened his eyes slowly, scanning the valley for danger. His blade still rested within reach. "We need to keep moving," he said, voice rough but steady. The girl hesitated. "But you're hurt." He shook his head. "I've carried worse. If we stay, they'll come back with more." She bit her lip, fear rising again. But this time she didn't argue. She rose and helped him to his feet, her small hands steadying his weight. Step by step, they left the cliffs behind. The road ahead wound down into green hills. As the sun climbed, the air grew warmer. Birds circled in the sky, and the world felt larger than ever before. For the girl, every sight was new. She kept glancing around, her eyes wide, drinking in the world as if for the first time. At midday, they stopped near a small stream. The human sat on a fallen log, his strength fading. The girl knelt in front of him, her voice trembling. "Why, do you keep going? You could rest, you could leave me." He met her gaze, his eyes firm. "I told you, I don't leave people behind. Not anymore." Her chest tightened. His words cut through every lie she had ever believed about herself. Slowly she whispered, "Then I won't leave you either." For the first time, a faint smile touched his lips. By nightfall, they reached the edge of a human settlement. Tall walls of stone rose against the sky, guarded by men with rifles. Torches burned at the gates. The girl froze, panic rushing back. "They'll see me," she whispered. "They'll know I'm not human, they'll send me back." The human shook his head. His voice was steady, carrying the weight of truth. "No. Here. Slavery is outlawed. No one will chain you again." Her breath caught. She wanted to believe him. But the fear of rejection twisted her heart. Her steps faltered. Seeing her hesitation, the man knelt beside her. "Listen to me," he said firmly. "You are not property, not trash, not forgotten. You are alive, and you deserve to live, free." Her eyes filled with tears. Slowly she nodded. At the gates, the guards raised their weapons. "Who goes there?" one demanded. The human lifted his chin. "A traveler, and my daughter." The girl's heart stopped. "Daughter?" The guards exchanged glances, then lowered their weapons. "Enter. Be welcome." The gates creaked open, and they stepped inside. The girl's chest burned with emotion. Daughter. He had called her his daughter, not slave, not stranger, not nothing. For the first time in her life, someone had given her a place in the world. The settlement bustled with life. Children laughed as they played. Merchants shouted at their stalls. The girl clutched the human's cloak tightly, overwhelmed by the noise and color. But no one looked at her with scorn. No one called her worthless. They reached a small house near the edge of town. The human opened the door, its hinges creaking. Inside, it was simple. Wooden chairs, a table, a bed. But to the girl, it looked like a palace. She stepped inside slowly, her eyes wide. This is yours? Ours now, he corrected. Her knees grew weak. She sank into the chair, clutching the blanket around her. Tears streamed down her face as the weight of her life finally broke. The cages, the chains, the endless, nights of despair. And now this. A home, a family, a beginning. The human placed a hand on her shoulder, steady and warm. No one will hurt you here, not while I breathe. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "Why me? Why did you choose me?" His eyes softened. "Because when the world left you behind, I couldn't." That night, the girl lay beneath a real roof for the first time in her life. The blanket covered her, the fire warmed her, and safety surrounded her. For the first time, her dreams were not filled with chains. As sleep took her, one thought echoed in her heart. I am not nothing. I am not forgotten. I am his daughter, and with that truth her new life began.